Mayte, welcome to the Legacy Lounge and participating in our series, The Legacy Ladies. We're so excited to talk about your career, which has been fascinating. You've owned your own business. You are currently the Texas Director for Public Relations for Goya Foods. I don't know if everyone knows that they're the largest Hispanic owner of a food company in the United States. You were born in Mexico City, spent that 1 year. You've spent the rest of your life in the United States, but raised by grandparents that taught you Cuban work ethic and parents as well, who are just incredible. You have a son and a daughter, and you have been a champion for women throughout Houston. You have served as the past chairman for the Institute of Hispanic Culture. In 2023, you were acknowledged as Women Who Mean Business. In 2023, you became a Texas Hall of Famer through the Greater Houston Southwest Chamber of Commerce. And you've had just a multicultural heritage that's beautiful, but spending most of it in the U.S., but still having all these incredible relatives around the world. And your perspective is really healthy for all of us. So welcome to the Legacy Lounge. And as we speak to the success that you've achieved, tell us about what a typical day at Goya Foods is. I mean, food is front and center everywhere right now. So tell me how you spend a typical day and what your role is.
But allow me to say thank you first. Thank you for having me here. Thank you for sharing a little bit about me in this legacy. What did you say?
The Legacy Lounge.
Lounge. It's so
for
special.
Remarkable women.
Well, thank you for having a voice for women and sharing. I like to be behind the scenes. It's where I'm most comfortable. But in the business that I am, I have no problem speaking and talking a lot. It's just usually behind the scenes. So thank you.
My pleasure.
And to your wonderful crew here that's part of the legacy.
It is. It is part of our legacy.
I love
you.
that. Food is what brings us together. Food is what brings families together. And Goya is a big family. It's a big family. You probably know when you are in an office all day, it's your family. It's the people you spend the most time with.
Right.
So we eat together, we cry together, we succeed together. It's a lot of that. So and
you engage the community together.
We engage the community.
It's an amazing culture. We'll have many good examples from you today, but it's unique.
It is unique. And we all have to eat. And we all have grandmother's special recipe. We all have something that makes other people feel special. And a lot of the times it has something to do with a recipe of some sort. So they're thus the food. It's in every household.
Brings us together. I agree.
Yes.
But, in your role as Director of PR, as I looked and read about you a little bit, you're doing public relations, you're doing communications, you're doing marketing. And it's so critical to a company, and you do it all with ease and grace. But how do you do that?
I think I can go back to my culture upbringing. I had incredible parents, and I would say that Cuban heritage, you do it all. You do all of it. When I drove up to this building, I was like, oh my gosh, I started my career here, working for Pierpont Communications in this very building. And
wow.
When you work for a small, and before that, at a smaller agency, when you work for a small agency, you do it all. And you never stop doing that. And then when you're raised by Cuban parents that are always do your best and help wherever you can, you just do. So
it's a strong work ethic, and no one's clinging to a job description.
Exactly. Yeah. You don't measure your titles. If something needs to be done, it happens to be marketing, you do it. Absolutely. You need to review a contract. That's it. I'm not a lawyer, but you learn, you do it. It's just kind of how it is. It's a very large company, but we run like a small family.
And I think that may be why, being in food and you're a global business, as tough and stressful times like the pandemic happened and as communities really need food, you guys have stepped out globally.
We've donated millions of
I
pounds
think I
of
read
food
4 million pounds of food were donated
in 1 year. Yes.
in 1 year.
Yes.
And that was, where was that distributed primarily?
Primarily in the United States.
Really?
But we did send food to Venezuela.
Okay.
We also sent food to Guatemala. We sent food to Honduras. During the pandemic, those small countries, they were devastated. They didn't, I mean, if we were struggling, our pantries, our food banks were empty. We were helping in the United States, but the need came from so many of our communities where they have family members here. The giant Hispanic community of Houston. So we gave food globally, but we always do. Whenever there's a crisis, we just gave food in Haiti with Jack Brewer, and where it's impossible to get food right now. There are gangs
Well,
on
and inflation is really with us, and some reports indicate that food prices are up as much 50% in the grocery stores, and it's creating just worldwide stress. So how do you guys do that when, I mean, you're giving something away that has incredible value, and the prices are going up every day?
They are. Just the raw materials going up. The cans went up 30%.
Really?
But we've been in the business for a long time. Goya is a company that's been around for 88 years.
Is it really?
So we've seen a lot of crisis, and knowing that we're in hurricane season, knowing that there will be food shortages and crises, we always plan. We plan for that. Like we
So
would
do
be
you have
planning.
excess inventory that you know that you'll be able or that you'll want to contribute? Because
Doesn't work like that. There's never
Okay.
excess inventory. It's
All
always
right.
for sale, but it just always happens. It's in our DNA.
That
When
is
there's
amazing.
a need, we give. And I
Okay.
think it always comes back to us sevenfold.
Mhm.
We give, and people help us to give. It's part of who Goya is.
part of your culture.
Mhm.
So before Goya, you had your own firm.
I did, and Goya was a client of mine.
Okay. So did you go from working for Goya in your business to then working for your largest client? Was that
Correct.
how it happened?
That's how that happened.
Okay, so in some ways the job didn't change a lot, but there must have been some differences between running your own business and being an executive.
Absolutely. I think they didn't realize, my colleagues in the office, they didn't realize that there was much of a change because I had been working in the same role for 17 years when I came on board. But I came on board just before the pandemic. And
Oh.
those times got very interesting. We had a pandemic, and food industry was in chaos, and
Absolute chaos.
it needed planning, and I was there when it was essential. We were an essential business. We never closed one day. We operated and had to make sure to have food stable items like our beans and like our staple products on the shelves. Some of the trucks would arrive at the grocery stores and they would go straight, it would be taken right off the truck and sold because it's the easiest thing. It wasn't beans
Amazing.
and certain things are very affordable, but the timing was very providential.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And during that time, I mean, you sell to the consumer
Yes.
primarily, but you also have restaurants as customers to some extent, right?
Absolutely, sure.
Okay. And during that time, they were failing
They were.
miserably. They couldn't get help. The prices were beginning to spiral. So,
They were shut down.
yes,
Mm-hmm.
that must have been a really hard time to keep everyone's spirits up.
Well, that's when they needed the help the most. I would get calls. I work with the media in Houston and with the community, and I would get calls. Mayte, there's this family. I need help. We would make pantry
Right
boxes
to the
of
family level.
pantries. Oh, absolutely.
Incredible.
Directly to the families.
Can you think of a more challenging time in your career than the pandemic?
Those were very interesting times to be in PR.
You were in the thick of it
Oh, yeah.
during that, right?
Yes, yes.
So you'd wake up every morning and say, what's it going to be like today?
What's next? There's no typical day in the life of a PR executive. It's always putting out fires and what is today going to bring. You'll have programs like the Genuine World Cup that I get to participate in tomorrow, and today where you get to be with children that make a difference. If you could speak to that,
because this is another example of how Goya really reaches out into the community. Tell us about the World Cup.
Oh, it's a sporting event. Soccer unites people, and it's an event that brings together genuine athletes to celebrate sports and the disabilities that some children and adults have that doesn't keep them from being able to play a sport, to be inclusive, and to see the joy in these teams as they celebrate together. And
must be amazing.
Beautiful.
They wouldn't get exposure any other way. That is really incredible.
It's a beautiful program. I can't wait to be out there at the field tomorrow and cheer these teams on that came from Portugal, Spain, Houston. Of course, our Dynamos are there. Miami. It's
and
great.
You're taking some of these kids, and they are kids, right?
Are
they adults also?
They're adults. They're for 18 and older.
Oh, 18, but still young.
Yes.
18 and older, and they're going to an Astros game.
They are. They're going to Astros game. They were at NASA today. And
wonderful.
We're proud to be part of that.
Great. When you entered the marketing industry, I mean, you had to learn quickly that companies that can differentiate themselves really, products are important, but differentiating yourself and reaching your audience is really important. Are there any kind of tips with all this experience you've had about how to differentiate? How do you really differentiate a company from a marketing and PR communication standpoint?
You are who you are. You always are genuine. Genuine World Cup. I mean, it's a perfect segue. You are who you are. Know your market and have something authentic for your market. Authentic and quality. And you differentiate that way. The story of Goya is the story of the immigrant that arrived to New York from Spain. That's how it was born. Immigrants first miss their food from home. They miss their food. They miss their family, but they'll go visit them, or they'll come visit them. But the food that they grew up with is what they miss the most. And so Goya is born.
It's the fabric of culture, isn't it?
It is. In this case, it was sardines. It was a can of sardines. It was Spanish olive oil, Spanish olives, which are the best in the world. Goya's olive oil is the 6th best in the world. It's a fantastic product. We just celebrated 50 years of the plant in Seville, Spain.
Wow. That's where the plant is.
That's where the plant is, yes.
Incredible. Okay.
Yes. And then we kept, the immigration kept coming, and we had Caribbeans came from Puerto Rico, from Cuba, and we had a Caribbean line of products, plantains, plantain chips, mojo. Then you have your Colombian immigrants, your Central American immigrants, your South American immigrants, your Mexicans. And so the product lines that we have, they're for each niche. And that's
but they kept growing as the fabric of society changed
completely.
And people migrated throughout the world. You guys were really at the front of that, looking at how can they feel at home.
Absolutely.
That is an amazing, that's your backstory. That is really incredible. Thank you for that.
And you can't go wrong. If you give a consumer what he wants, what he misses, the nostalgia from home and its quality, and you put it for them, that's marketing. You can't go wrong if you do it that way. You have to always have, the tagline is, if it's Goya, it has to be good.
Yes.
Well, a can is a can. You can't see through it, but you have to trust.
Good point.
And that was always the tagline that our founder came up with. And he's like, I don't care, but the quality is most important. So quality is key. It's absolutely key.
And culture, being who you are, you're so diverse. You reach out into the community on so many different levels, but I know one of your passions that you have really raised awareness for is human trafficking.
Yes.
Tell us about how you started learning about that. And I think a lot of us think we can't do anything. And I do think there are people who know about it, but they may not say anything because they fear reprisal, they fear losing status, or just don't want to be uncomfortable talking about something negative. But what can we do? Because we're the worst city for trafficking in the country.
We are.
And that's not a great label.
No, it's not.
And so what tell us first what Goya is doing, because it's really been a remarkable cross-section of approaches you've had, and then what we can do as individuals.
Well, my entire PR team and my colleagues from across the country, we got together and we said, let's do something. We support the organizations that go out into the streets. We support organizations that educate our children in the schools to keep them safe. Well, what can we do? We can talk about it.
Okay.
Yesterday I was at a meeting at the General Consul of Mexico because it was a day that a trafficking day, a landmark day with the United Nations. And the Amber Alerts were going off with a 12-year-old. So we're all mothers, we're all grandmothers, we're all sisters, and we have to care for our children. And it doesn't mean you have to go out in the street and rescue children. That's for someone else to do. But we can be aware. We can see something, say something, talk about it, research it.
How did you become so passionate about this cause?
Apart from Goya Cares being born, I have a friend in Houston, Jennifer, who convicted me. And she said, oh yes, you know that Houston is #1 in trafficking. And I said, yeah, I know. And she looked at me squarely and said, and what have you done about it? My jaw dropped. And immediately I thought, what have we done? What have I done? And that was something that I think stays with me to this day and is a driving force.
That poignant question.
Yeah.
What can we do?
Talk about it. We cannot be afraid to talk about a subject matter that's uncomfortable. I love this city. I was raised in this beautiful city of Houston. I want to be proud of Houston. That's a black mark on Houston. But if we become a city that's aware and tells those bad guys, not here, not in my city, not with my family, we're part of this, we're part of the solution, not part of the problem. Go to GoyaCares.com. It's a website.
So that is a great.
Well, it's a website with
less
resources.
Intimidating way for people to reach out. If they see something, they can say something.
Crime Stoppers is our partner in Houston.
Okay, are they?
And Crime Stoppers has education in the schools. It's become a law in Texas that you have to have for students, for children, education on what trafficking is. Trafficking can happen to any child. Does not matter their socioeconomic level, does not matter what school they go to, what part of town they live in. We can all be affected by it. And so it's as easy as knowing it. So when I say go to Goya.com, there's resources, there's videos for parents that we've produced with production that's high quality Hollywood style, not the kind that the kids watch in school and they're like, oh my gosh, that's so boring. They fall asleep. It's good quality, engaging, and there's lots of videos.
It's informative.
It's in schools. If you're watching and you have a church or a community organization or even your company, we educated our employees first. We immediately said, let's educate our own
team
family
first.
Absolutely.
And that. I mean, people are spending work time, but they're learning about this, and the company is making it so clear
Yeah.
that this is about our responsibility.
Keep your children safe. These are the signs of trafficking. And like I say, they're in the high schools. Groomers.
What
It's
would you
called
say
grooming.
the 2 or 3 biggest signs are for those of us who, would want to help and
Well,
get it?
there's 6 steps of grooming. Grooming is when a young lady is a target of a trafficker. Trafficking is the largest business in the world. It's $1 billion industry. It supersedes arms and drug trade. You can consume a drug and it's done. You've consumed it. But a child, you can traffic a person up to many times a day. And they just see dollar signs. They don't see a human. So there's 6 signs. Befriending. I'm going to look at my notes. Intoxication. They intoxicate them. Then comes alienating.
But intoxicate, is that just by building them up, or are you talking about giving them
Yeah, you give them alcohol, you give them
alcohol
drugs.
and drugs?
Then you get a picture of a young girl. A young girl from a very good family goes to church with her family. They take a picture of her in a compromising picture. And then the next thing you know, they say, do what I'm telling you to do, or I'm going to show your parents. I'm going to put this on social media. I'm going to show this to the schools. So the bullying, the social media bullying is the phone. There's no more boundaries. It never ends. Then the next one is isolation. They isolate you from your family. Oh, your old-fashioned family. Don't listen to them. And
They don't understand you. I do.
Oh, of course. They desensitize you by saying, "Oh, it's okay, just once. I need you to help do this so that I can pay for a surgery that I need." They desensitize you of your values.
Okay.
And then they capitalize. And before you know it, when they've capitalized on a young girl, she's gone. And the reason I got into the person that taught me everything I've learned,
Interesting.
she said, she was in the oil and gas industry, Fight for Us, if you've heard of it. There's a group of women who are putting their money behind this organization to try to raise awareness and say, enough.
Enough.
If we become a community that's aware, a community that's looking and saying, that doesn't look right. That person, that man does not look like he's the father of this young girl. I can't go to a restaurant or get on an airplane without kind of doing the scan. My husband's like, come on, but I do, because you can't, we have to be our brother's keeper. We have to speak
And it
up.
isn't easy because it's gender neutral. There are as many women involved in trafficking as there are men.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely.
And so it's not always.
The victims, 75% of the victims are women. 25 of them are children. 25% of those are children.
Okay.
But boys are also victims.
Yeah, that's my understanding, and that's a growing tide.
It's growing.
With young boys.
It's sickening. It's growing. Yep.
You're profoundly passionate about that, and you guys will probably continue awareness programs and be.
Absolutely. We're involved right now in the schools. We're trying to get to the young children before they're vulnerable. The way a groomer gets to a young girl.
And that's that's kind of a balancing act, isn't it? Because you don't want to frighten them.
No.
For something that may never happen. On the other hand, if they don't know the signs, they won't be able to, they aren't comfortable telling.
Absolutely. The best way, when people say, what do you do? Talk about it. It's not taboo. Open your eyes, talk about it, be aware. That way you won't be a victim. And if you see someone that things don't look right, say something. That's it. I mean, be good. I was talking to my mom today. Be good human beings. There's so much evil in the world, and people are not as good as they used to be. They're becoming less kind.
Do you
everywhere.
think that's a function of all the social media and all of the online communication that's more anonymous than one-on-one?
Well, of course, because you can bully on a phone very easily, but also even just society. It's just people are looking inward. They're looking at themselves, and they're not as concerned about the world. I was telling you a story of my grandfather when he was a diplomat, a Cuban diplomat, and the way he was concerned about the people around him. That's how we grew up. We were good neighbors. We did different things. Now our society.
It's a fascinating story about your grandfather. If you don't mind sharing it.
I wish I researched it better, but my grandfather was the ambassador to the United States for Cuba. And in the years that he was in his position, the World War was going on. And a boat, this is something we heard as kids, that there was a boat of people leaving the World War, of Jews, and they needed a visa. They needed to be able to be accepted somewhere. And they were offering a great sum of money per person. And when he found that out, he said, absolutely, give them the visa and don't take a penny. Don't take a penny.
Treat them like human beings, not animals that are for sale.
Exactly. That's the
and gave
legacy.
them free passage.
Yeah, he did. And
at that time, I know there were few countries in the world that were even recognizing those rights. They kept going from port to port to
this
port.
This is the story that I heard, that it was like that. And when they got to him, he said, this ends here.
Like an incredible, the most extraordinary gift. It takes a remarkable human being.
I never
you're
met
from
him.
Good DNA. You're from great stuff. There's no question about it.
You grew up with stories like that. You always do the right thing. You're going to do the right thing when people are not watching. Always. We should return to be that kind of citizen, that we don't do the right thing so that the selfie catches us, or wait a minute, let me set up the shot, or where's my selfie stick? We should do the right thing always. Because that's who we should be as people, as humans.
And take care of other human beings.
That's what we're meant for.
So with all of your experience, I'm sure you've had mentors, I'm sure you worked with people through the years that gave you great advice. Maybe people gave you unsolicited advice that you weren't as excited about. But when you think about the best advice or the worst that you've gotten, can you think of an example of great advice?
Yes, and I will. The best advice I ever got was from my mother, and she said, be yourself. Be yourself, because the world wants you to be different. Look like the perfect this person, or think the same thoughts. Be yourself. Research things. Study your own. Make your own statements. That was something it's not exclusively Cuban or Hispanic, but it very much was. We're fighters. We're hard workers. We have good work ethic, and being yourself was very important. That's the best advice I ever had, and I'm still trying to hear it and do it, because the world every day wants to define us.
And we've got that little person talking on our shoulder saying, well, you shouldn't do this and you shouldn't say that, because it might affect how this one and that one thinks.
More so now than ever in history.
Yes.
But we are put on this earth, and we are given opportunities to meet people. Maybe to have that kind word, that beautiful kind word with someone, and it just changes the course of their day or their life. But if we're not ourselves, you may not have known. You may not have reacted the right way.
Give it a chance to just be yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and there'll be far less questions you ask later in the day or at night when you can't sleep about why you didn't ask that question. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We all hate that. When you're like, I should have said this.
Yep.
Happens to us all.
Are there any books or publications that you read that you want to share with our viewers?
I have a book that I look at every day.
Every day?
Every day.
That's an important.
I love it. Well, I come down the stairs, and I have a little prayer area. I do begin my day in prayer, because there's no other way. The whole day. And the little book is a book of Saint Teresa, Mother Teresa.
Mother Teresa.
And when we were just talking about what we were talking about, there's a beautiful pictures, and then there's little quotes, and there's a story that she walked up to this gentleman in the street. That she's always helping the poor in the street. She would tell the story that you should always walk away from someone leaving them better, whether it's a smile, So in this case, the one that I just read that impacted me, I'm sure I have a picture of it in my phone. She was on the street helping the poor, and she saw this man who was drunk, intoxicated, homeless, and she walked up to him. She walked up to him and took his hand and said, "Are you okay? You're loved." And this man said to her, "That's the first time I felt human flesh." He said, "Your hands are so warm." And he said, "That's the first time I've felt warm hands or human flesh in years. Thank you." And he changed. That gesture of holding his hand. So that book, you read these little quotes, but it inspires you to walk away and say, wow, she impacted this guy who we would walk past. I know. I mean, so often we would. She was an incredibly special person.
It was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
But some people never get a chance to snuggle up to anything other than a trash can or maybe a beer bottle. And, human touch has always been such a differentiator.
Mm-hmm. I read that and I was like, oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
How many times do we not? We're such a plastic, such a technology-driven community now that those visiting with people, like tomorrow at the Genuine World Cup, I get to hug these kiddos.
Right. It's going to be great.
It's so wonderful. It's great.
When we talk about always being the best version of yourself, and we'd all like to be, but there must have been times as a woman, particularly starting 20 years ago or so, that there might have been times when you didn't feel like an equal as a woman in the PR area or now in food manufacturing and distribution. What advice would you have for women who find themselves in that position? And do you think it's different today than it was when you started?
I think it's still the same. It's still a struggle, but I have a mentor that works with me.
Okay.
And she always says, I don't compete against men or anyone else. I compete only against myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that I don't need to look anywhere else.
I think women who started with that premise were healthy in the sense that they really didn't find reason to be upset with other people or other situations because you there's only so much you can control.
Right. And if you want to get something done, do it. And if someone's stopping you in your way, jump over them. I mean, there's always a way. I think that's that Cuban ingenuity. My husband tries to throw things away, and I'm like, don't you dare. In Cuba, they would fix that 10 times over.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. But you do so much championing for women, whether it's through the Hispanic Institute of Culture or through Texas Hall of Fame with the Greater Southwest Chamber of Commerce. What would you tell your younger self if you could, jump over some barriers faster, some obstacles? What would you tell your younger self?
I might tell my younger self to not be afraid, to that your voice is important and it matters.
As you said earlier, yes, be genuine, be yourself.
And be and be bold. Be not afraid. I grew up being, bold, but at the same time, we girls were told to be quiet and observant, and especially Hispanic, Latinas, more so. There's a saying in Spanish that says, is "Calladita te ves mejor," and it translates to, and I really dislike it. Translates to, being silent, you look prettier.
Oh
yeah.
You send that message often enough, and it really tells young girls how they need to be. So
very common saying.
To not be afraid. And I remember my mom always saying, if my sister was cantankerous, she would say, well, I'd rather she speak her mind, than be silent. And some people would get aggravated with that. But it was truly her saying, giving that same message. If you don't have a voice, and don't be afraid.
We only have today. Time is not something that can be replicated. and you should speak your mind and say it. Mm-hmm.
Well, you are truly one of the most authentic communicators, and it's been an honor to have you join us today. As busy as you are, I know you're going to be at the World Cup. You're always doing something, and to look at your website, I'm sure you're never home. But we are grateful for the gifts to the community and the champion of woman and womanhood and human trafficking, the work you've done there. And I know you're passionate. No one can meet you without hearing about how important it is for us to be diligent. And that is a great gift you give the community. So thank you so much for joining us in the Legacy Lounge.
Thank
and
you.
Look forward to seeing you more.
Thank you very much for your time and for the platform to share these important topics.
Thank you, Mayte.
Thank you.